Hi there, I am Dale and these are my books. I'm going to be talking about reading Shakespeare. Now, obviously there are lots of videos on YouTube about reading Shakespeare, and in this video I'm going to take a very personal approach, and what I'm going to be talking about is what I would have liked to have known about reading Shakespeare before actually doing so. And so this is coming from someone who's never studied English formally. I've never studied English as a subject at university. And also, I'm not pretending to be an expert. I'm definitely not an expert. And so these videos are intended for people who are non-experts and possibly don't have all the time in the world to read a Shakespeare play. So it's for people who need hints on how to read Shakespeare and what the whole Shakespeare thing is about. The first thing I would say is that I think a lot of people do a disservice to Shakespeare. What they say is that they say that Shakespeare is wonderful and fantastic and he's the best writer in the English language and he's the best writer in the world and so on. And it's almost as if they're trying to say Shakespeare's a genius, and if I say he's a genius, if I can appreciate how much of a genius he is, then perhaps I'm a bit of a genius as well. And I think a lot of this can come across as being just a little bit pretentious. I have seen some Shakespeare plays and I've read some Shakespeare plays and I quite enjoy them. But sometimes they're difficult, sometimes they create a bit of work, sometimes I think particular scenes or particular characters are just not necessary and they should be cut out. In other words, my approach to Shakespeare is that they're just plays, and they're old plays, and they have difficulties. And so if I come across a Shakespeare play and I watch it, if I'm not in ecstasy 100% of the time, it might just be because I'm a bit dim and I don't have the aesthetic appreciation, or it could just mean that Shakespeare may not be 100% for me. Perhaps, dare I say it, not every single one of Shakespeare's plays is necessarily a work of perfection. So I think in approaching a Shakespeare play, one should just keep it real. It's just a play and take it from there. And that sort of talk also, I think, makes Shakespeare appear a little bit intimidating rather than inviting. Another thing that people say about Shakespeare is that the plays are not supposed to be read. You have to watch them. It's really important to watch the play, and that's how you get stuff out of the play. That's how you understand it. Well, yes, that's true, but for me at least, it's also important to study the play. There are a number of ways to do this. When I come across a Shakespeare play for the first time, I will just go straight to Wikipedia and I will read the synopsis about what the play is about. And it might identify the play as being an early comedy or during his dramatic period or being a late comedy. But I read the synopsis and I literally type out what the play is about. So this may only be one page or 2 pages, but it forces me to write down the names of the main characters and also to work out who's doing what to whom and when. And this video is one of a 2-part series, and we can see how I do this concretely in relation to Twelfth Night, which is the next video that I'll be doing. It's also necessary to read the play, and what I find with reading the play is that there's 2 ways of doing this. One is that you can just read the play in the Shakespearean English, and there will be lots of phrases that I come across that I simply don't understand. And therefore, what often happens is that you'll get a copy of the play with lots of footnotes down the bottom. And I find reading the text of Shakespeare's play and then going to the footnotes down the bottom to be really tedious. It just really breaks up the text. And so I would recommend a series. It's called the No Fear Shakespeare series. And they have done this with almost every book. And the way it works is that on the left-hand side of the page, you can't read this, I don't think, there is the original Shakespeare language. And then on the right-hand side of the page, it's in contemporary English. So if, for example, you're reading a play like Romeo and Juliet, you might come across the phrase, which is the famous phrase from the balcony scene, where Juliet says, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Now, for anyone who doesn't know what that phrase means, I challenge you right now, articulate what that means. What is she saying? When she says, wherefore art thou Romeo, what does it mean? And I would suggest that you can't really put into words what it means unless you know. You have to read the footnote, or you have to read the No Fear Shakespeare edition and see what it says in contemporary writing next door to it. And the reason why I'm emphasizing this point is that you can watch the play 20 times, but you may be no clearer to understanding what is meant by the phrase, wherefore art thou Romeo? And the only way you're going to understand that is, I would suggest, by reading a footnote, which is laborious, or looking at one of these books. And just to satisfy the anticipation there, wherefore art thou Romeo means why are you Romeo? Why are you called Romeo? And the only way to understand that is by reading the note or by looking at something like No Fear Shakespeare. So what I like to do is I like to look at the structure of the play on Wikipedia, I like to type out the names, who's doing what to whom, and then I like to listen to it. Now, there are some audio editions of Shakespeare plays. Some of them are on YouTube for free and some of them are through Audible, where they are produced as an audio file. That is, they're meant to be listened to. And this is different to going on YouTube and getting a movie and then just listening to the audio. One of the things that infuriates me about movies of Shakespeare plays is that they have the technology to put in special effects, so therefore they feel they should do it. So instead of just getting the audio, which is what you get with some of the purpose-built audio recordings, you get the sounds of wind and you get the sounds of waves crashing on rocks, and you get all sorts of things, birds chirping and so on. I find all of that just distracting from the language. I just want to listen to the words. So I go to Wikipedia, I do up some notes, I listen to the play, and then after all of that, then I might read the play. Or it might be that I listen to the audio version and read the actual words at the same time. It's really then that I can watch the film as entertainment, or preferably see the play myself, and that's when I can understand it. So it does take a bit of preparation, and like everybody who likes to read literature, there is a balance there, isn't there? You can read Pulp Fiction, and it's like chewing gum, but you've forgotten everything you've read the next day. It just doesn't leave a lasting impression. Where with literature, with more highbrow stuff, it does take effort. It takes me effort to read fiction, to read classics. But once you've done it, I find it much more rewarding, and you remember what you've read much for a much longer period of time. So the next book. There are lots of things I don't enjoy about Shakespeare plays, and you can say it's either the Shakespeare play, or you can say it's the way that they're done by modern actors and by modern producers of plays. The sword fighting. So many Shakespeare plays I've seen have sword fighting in them. They have sword fights. And it can be the case that if Shakespeare has said there is a sword fight here, then there has to be a sword fight. It's part of the play. But the screaming and the shouting and the clashing of swords minute after minute after minute doesn't do anything for me. It's boring. I don't know why they do it. Presumably it's fun for the actors, and that's why they do it. But all of the sword fights can go. Any sword fight can be reduced to 20 seconds at most. It doesn't need to go on for 5 minutes. The other thing that I really don't like about Shakespeare is the overacting. It is very rare for me to see Shakespeare and to think that it was well acted. Almost always it's extremely badly acted. No one asks for a cup of tea in Shakespeare. They ask for a cup of tea! And that tremendous overacting I just find completely unnecessary, and it doesn't add to it in any way whatsoever. And I suspect it might be just a lot of actors who have been raised on this idea that speaking like this is somehow just the way to do Shakespeare, and no one calls it out. I think it's horribly acted. It's not pleasant to listen to. It's just really, really bad. This is to be distinguished from projecting your voice. One of the great things that actors can do, which requires a lot of skill, is that they can be on stage and they can whisper to another character. So you have two people on stage, they could be whispering to each other. But they whisper so loudly that someone at the back of the audience can still hear what they're saying. So as part of their acting, they're pretending to whisper, but in fact they're not whispering. They're actually projecting their voices all the way to the back of the audience. And that's a real skill that actors acquire. However, that seems to be lost with a lot of Shakespearean acting that I've seen. And that is, what you get is people shouting at the audience in a really, really unpleasant way. I'm thinking of a particular British actor who does this. His name is Brian Blessed, and he has an enormous voice. It is extraordinarily loud. And he speaks sometimes in dramatic roles very, very loudly. You want to cover your ears. It is so loud. And I just don't see that fun. It's just not a good way of listening to Shakespeare. And I really wish that actors would tone it down. I'm just looking at my notes. The other thing with Shakespeare, if you see a Shakespeare play, let's say it's Macbeth or let's say it's Hamlet, you might get the impression that all the Shakespeare plays are the same. They're really, really serious. People die. They're not a barrel of laughs. What I have discovered relatively recently, however, just in the last 5 years, is that Shakespeare wrote an awful lot of plays. And so if you see something like Hamlet or if you see something like Macbeth and that's not your cup of tea, then you might want to see Romeo and Juliet, which is more of a charming love story. And although there's bad things that happen in Romeo and Juliet, it's fairly different to the straight out dramas and to the straight out tragedies. And if they're not to your liking, it may be that you want to have a look at the history plays. And the history plays are quite different. They're just a different style of play. They could be written by someone else. In addition to that, if you would like something light-hearted, you can look at his comedies. And Shakespeare had two periods, the early comedies and the late comedies, where the feel of the play is just completely different. It's a lot of slapstick. It's a lot of puns. It's a lot of rude jokes. And that's particularly the case with Twelfth Night, which is my next video. So everything I've just said, I wish I knew before I saw my first Shakespeare play. That, first of all, don't let the pretentiousness scare you off. If you see a Shakespeare play and you've given it a chance, you've worked out the characters, you've read the story, you've listened to it, you've watched the film, and better still, you watch the play, real life. And if you don't like it, it's not for you. That's not. It doesn't mean that this is a damning indictment of your lack of culture. It means that that play was just not for you. The other thing I would say is that for me, one of the great things about, oh, you see, I'm slipping into the into the pretentious language. One of the things I like about Shakespeare is not so much the originality of his stories, because I think academics agree that his story is not particularly original. That's particularly the case, for example, with Julius Caesar, where I have read the original Roman story in which Shakespeare based that on, and you can obviously see that he pinched a lot of ideas. But there will be lines, or there will be two lines that you may recognise, neither a borrower nor a lender be, or it could be that it just strikes you as being particularly beautiful. An example being, there's a line by Shakespeare where a character is talking about a man he admires, and this man is just beautiful. His daily life is just beautiful. What he does and how he treats people. And it is so beautiful that the character knows that he will never live up to that other character. I will never be like that man. I wish I could be, but I will just never be like that. And it actually makes me feel a bit bad about myself. And Shakespeare puts this into a line. His life hath a daily beauty that makes me ugly. And I think that line is just beautiful. And when I see a Shakespeare play, there will be 3, 4 lines like that, possibly 6 lines if I'm lucky, where I hear that line or I see that line and I almost get tingly. That's just beautiful. That's great. And it may be that from the entire play, I might only get 2 sentences out of the play that I really, really enjoy and that makes me go tingly. And if I can get 1 tingle from a Shakespeare play, then it's worth putting in the effort. So, final point. Don't worship Shakespeare. Meet him halfway, and if you don't like the play, that's fine. Just try another play from another period. And if you read several of the plays and you don't like Shakespeare, then perhaps that just means you don't like Shakespeare. Put him down and go and read something else that you will enjoy a lot more. So I hope these comments help, and if you're interested to see how I practice the theory, then do check out the video on my review of Shakespeare's play Twelfth Night. I hope this has helped.